It seems like we're living in two different societies right now. In one world, COVID is surging. Hospitals are overwhelmed, and doctors and nurses are doing everything they can to keep more people from dying.
You know, you're holding the hands of a pregnant wife whose husband is fighting for his life.
Every single patient on this unit right now has a breathing tube.
It's overwhelming, and it just keeps happening, and it doesn't stop.
In the other world, parents and politicians are shutting down school vaccine clinics, blaming the surge on immigrants and refusing to promote mask mandates.
I don't believe people should be bribed to get the shot, especially children.
Please know that we, the people, will not comply.
The thing is, these aren't really two different societies, because it's all happening here in Oregon.
Kind of feels like the world just gaslighting you, like they don't believe your experience. Like, this is, why don't they believe what we are experiencing and what we're telling them?
Here's the story.
Some of you believe, for the people who don't believe, it's time. It's time to start believing. I'm Dan Haggerty. Thanks for being with us. Thank you for closing out your week with us here on The Story. Of course, this is the show that needs you to be here with us so you can continue to help us steer the ship and figure out the stories you want to be told in your community. So please reach out. Let us know what's on your mind. Let us know what you think about our coverage, things we need to be asking questions about. You can email us at thestory@kgw.com, or you can find me on Facebook or Instagram, or as always, use Twitter and the hashtag #HeyDan. Let's get started. Let's get back now to the overwhelmed Oregon ICUs and a look inside that you have not seen before, a look inside that will scare you. It should scare you. It'll make you sad. It'll make you angry. It'll make you frustrated. It's a type of coverage that we need to see right now from inside of our hospitals, where the people who are struggling and dying are Oregonians, our neighbors and our friends. Where the doctors and the nurses in there, the people who are overworked and disheartened, are our friends and our family. The same people who drive the same roads as you do and buy their milk in the same dairy aisle. All right? Last night, our Pat Doris took us inside St. Charles Medical Center in Bend for an eye-opening report. Again, this isn't some national news piece from some other state or a Facebook post or YouTube commentary. This is a reporter who you have watched in this community for 21 years show us a heartbreaking account of a packed ICU full of unvaccinated people and the ripple effect it has on all of us. Here's a part of Pat's report that, frankly, I haven't been able to stop thinking about.
We're in trouble. We're in trouble like every other hospital in Oregon.
The ripple effect is potentially widespread. Because the hospital is full, cancer patients and heart patients and others cannot get preventative surgeries. They would need to stay overnight, and there's simply no room. Do you worry there's people out in the community that are going to die because they weren't able to get this care?
We know that there are people out in the community who have died because they haven't been able to get this care. And yes,
it's already happened.
Yeah, it's already happening, and I'm very worried that it's going to continue to get worse.
What keeps me up at night are the patients who aren't getting their surgery for their colon cancer because we're full of COVID patients. And that's what I lie awake thinking about every night. I think about the patients that I am discharging from the emergency department who normally would be admitted to the hospital, but I've got no place to put them, so we say, well, just go home and hope you don't die.
Wow.
Yeah.
She later changed that to come back if you get sicker, but you get the idea.
And I hope you do get the idea. But sadly, I know that a lot of you do not. And we know that these stories still need to be told. So tonight, we go back into the ICU, this time at OHSU. Our Christine Pitawanich was given access to the medical ICU. Of the 14 people in that unit while we were there, only one was vaccinated.
It really is something else to be here in the ICU in person. You know, you hear about it all the time. I've heard it via Zoom from doctors and nurses, what it's like, but it's entirely different being here in person. Right now I'm looking at a 20-something-year-old woman hooked up to so many tubes, her blood going in and out of her body, becoming oxygenated. These tubes are thick, they're big, and in the corner of her room, stuffed animals, presumably from family members, and it's just heartbreaking.
Christine Pitawanich joining us now. And Christine, I can't imagine what it would have been like to be in those hallways, seeing so many people, young people, average people, unresponsive like that.
Yeah, and Dan, the reality is one of the ICU nurses tells me that maybe they have one person in their 70s, the rest of their patients are in their 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s. You heard me talk about that young woman that I saw in that room. Well, down the hall, in another room, photos line the wall. We blurred faces for privacy, but I can tell you the people in them are smiling. They look like family members, and the man in many of them is smiling broadly. But now he's nearly unresponsive, just a few feet away in a hospital bed.
Wow. Now look, we've heard so much from the people who are working those floors, who the doctors and nurses who have been working non-stop. Do you get any sense of this emotional toll that it's been taking on them, the anger and frustration?
Oh, absolutely, no question about it. There were definitely a number of nurses that expressed anger, frustration. I mean, it's understandable. They're taking on extra shifts, they're working so hard, and really, they're taking on a lot of emotional, mental, and physical stress for something they say at this point is preventable.
Beyond frustrating. I had to call over to the pediatric ICU one day and ask for a Beanie Baby to give to a 12-year-old while I turned off the support and her dad died. I don't want to do that. You're holding the hands of a pregnant wife whose husband is fighting for his life. Who wants to do that? And it's overwhelming, and it just keeps happening, and it doesn't stop, and there is no end. We see no end. So it's what do you do?
Wow. I mean, and the reality is, Christine, you know this, OHSU is a leader in this community. It's a go-to place for serious medical conditions all over the region.
Yeah, Dan, and the thing is, smaller, more rural hospitals really depend on the doctors at OHSU, and their expertise, because often these smaller hospitals may not have the equipment or the expertise, the experience to treat some of these seriously ill patients. So now, when the inn is full, as one nurse put it to me, then that means these smaller hospitals have to then really scramble to learn new skills, to care for ill people, seriously ill people that they're not accustomed to caring for. And yes, the situation is grim, but every single ICU nurse and healthcare professional stressed to me the importance that people get that vaccine. Talk it out with your doctor. Talk it out with your healthcare professional if you have fears, because at this point, as they keep saying, it is so frustrating when something this deadly, when something that causes this much illness is preventable.
You said it. Christine, thank you for this important reporting and work. Now, we will have Christine's full story, you can see, from OHSU coming up tonight on KGW News at 6:30. So please stick around for that. You can also watch it right now at kgw.com, along with Pat's report from the ICU in St. Charles Medical Center in Bend. Now, ever since we got the vaccine, all right, a lot of elected leaders and public health officials have been trying to figure out ways to get that vaccine out to as many people as possible. I mean, the goal for most leaders has been to provide access to everybody who would need this shot to get this shot that could save their lives. Something different, though, is happening in Clackamas County. See, leaders there, they shut down a vaccine clinic that was scheduled for next week at Molalla High School. It was the latest in a series of clinics that have been happening at the high school there all summer. But all of a sudden, not anymore. They're done. First, let's take a look at the COVID situation right now in Molalla. Only 43% of people there are vaccinated. That's according to the Oregon Health Authority. 1 in every 15 people in Molalla have had COVID. And in Clackamas County as a whole, COVID cases in the last month went from 14 in one day to nearly 270 in one day. The battle over the vaccine clinic at Molalla High School was led by this guy here, Scott Kaiser, who is the mayor of Molalla. He says he personally is not vaccinated, but believes it's up to everyone to decide for themselves, unless they're a teenager. You see, under Oregon law, though, teenagers as young as 15 can decide whether they want to get vaccinated, and they can do so without their parents' consent or knowledge. And we should note, it's not just vaccines that pertains to. Teenagers can make a lot of medical decisions on their own. The Clackamas County Public Health Department had been putting on a vaccine clinic at Molalla High School for a while and offering anyone who came, teenagers, adults, whoever, a $50 gift card to get their vaccine. That's the part that Mollalla's mayor had a problem with.
My issue with the whole thing was the county giving $50 to kids to get the shot. I don't believe people should be bribed to get the shot, especially children. That's a moral and ethical thing in my world. And, you know, I've heard the complaint. I had somebody from Molalla message me today, and I've heard the complaint that I'm taking away, you know, I'm the one who did this. No, the school board decided, the Clackamas County commissioners, started off with Commissioner Schul, who I talked to. They decided not to do this. I expressed my frustration regarding it, and they made the decision.
Tony Mann, the superintendent of Molalla River School District, says he's the one who ultimately made the decision to shut down the clinic. And here's what he told us. I learned this clinic planned to include financial incentives to teens to be vaccinated without parent consent. Providing a financial incentive may encourage some adolescents to go around their parent guardian, which is not aligned with the values of the district. The Clackamas County Public Health Department says they do plan to schedule a new clinic in Molalla. In the meantime, if you need a vaccine in Molalla or Clackamas County, and a lot of people there do, there are several other events scheduled around the county. In Molalla, though, you can get a vaccine on Friday from 4 until 7 o'clock at Providence Medical Clinic. Now, Clackamas County isn't the only part of the state where it really kind of seems like leaders are just ignoring or maybe not paying close enough attention to what's happening in our hospitals. We saw that at this week's Board of Commissioner meeting in Josephine County, which is, along with the rest of Southern Oregon, being hit extremely hard by this COVID surge. Doctors at this very meeting told the commissioners that the county's low vaccination rate is what's causing the surge. But that didn't stop Commissioner Herman Bertschuger, the former Senate Republican leader, by the way, from saying this.
We know that we've been making cannabis raids, and we know that we have been finding a high amount of, I guess you could consider them farm workers or immigrant workers, or they're non-speaking workers that are working in these grow sites. 95% of them, I'm told, do not speak English, or at least they say they don't speak English, and they do not have identification. If you look at statistics of people that are coming over the southern border, you're looking at numbers anywhere from 25 to 50% have COVID.
Okay, I'm going to stop you right there. See, immigrants to Southern Oregon are not causing the surge. How do I know this? Well, because doctors have already said low vaccination rates in the entire population are causing the surge. This has also become a common right-wing claim spread by the governors of Texas and Florida. NBC News actually did a story debunking this claim. They talked to medical experts who say that, frankly, there's no evidence to show this to be true. None. While some people who are crossing the border may have COVID, of course that could be true. That is not what's overwhelming our hospitals right now. It is low vaccination rates in many areas of the country and the highly infectious Delta variant that's quickly spreading to mostly unvaccinated people. And again, that's what's happening in Southern Oregon right now. I talked to Jefferson Public Radio reporter April Ehrlich, who covered this board meeting.
It seems like this all kind of goes hand in hand with the general feeling of kind of being wary of government regulation. A lot of folks in Josephine County oppose taxes. They oppose any sort of regulation on, what they consider to be their personal freedoms, which they think, wearing face masks and getting a vaccine and having to close certain businesses during a pandemic, in their eyes, infringes on their personal freedoms. And in addition to that, there was a degree of skepticism that the commissioners had during the meeting about whether or not these health practices that the workers were saying were effective, whether they actually were effective. So there was, for instance, Herman Bertschuger Jr. brought up this over this weekend. Somebody died. 2 people died, from the coronavirus. One was vaccinated, one was unvaccinated. And he said, in my eyes, that's 50-50. So what's the point of getting the vaccine? But, then the health workers came out and said, well, actually, if you look at the numbers, about like 95% of everybody who's died was unvaccinated.
So, as you can see, there's still a misunderstanding about this virus. There's still a misunderstanding about this vaccine. And we are seeing those communities where the misunderstanding is maybe most obvious. Those are the ones that appear to be suffering the most. I mean, the morgue in Grants Pass says it's full right now from a surge in COVID deaths. They're planning to order refrigeration trucks to park outside of the overflow of bodies there. I want to thank April for her help to help us tell that story tonight. You can find her work on Jefferson Public Radio. All right, let's count some vaccines. Let's take a look at the people who have been vaccinated. More than 2.64 million Oregonians have gotten at least their first dose, and that's close to 63%, 62.7% of Oregon's entire population. That includes everybody, even kids under 12 who can't get the vaccine yet. In Washington, more than 5 million people have gotten at least their first dose. That works out to be more than 66% of the state's entire population, including kids. So as you can see, in both states, they are making progress, but still, we have a long way to go.
After nearly 100 Oregonians died in the June heat wave, is it time to start making sure everyone has air conditioning? Or at least make sure they're allowed to have it?
Do you think laws need to change?
Yes. I never want to see this, my neighbor going out in a body bag.
And here's a new idea for dealing with our ever-worsening wildfire season: treating forests to make them more resistant to fires. That's what Washington is trying out, when the story continues.
Welcome back. We always go through your questions and your comments during the break. Keep sending them in at thestory@kgw.com or use the hashtag HeyDan on Twitter. I also want to remind you about our Hey Help campaign this week. We are asking you to please consider donating to Mudbone Grown. They are a Black-owned farm enterprise that helps people of color to get into the farming and agriculture industry. If you'd like to donate, just open up the camera on your phone, point it at the QR code on the screen, or go to kgw.com/HeyHelp. So you might have heard Multnomah County is investigating 3 suspected deaths connected to the heat wave that we had earlier this month. That's, of course, on top of the dozens of people killed in the extreme heat in June. Now, this is something that is getting national attention, particularly the fact that most of the people who died didn't have air conditioning. You might have seen Nightly News air a bit of a story on it tonight. I want to play some of that for you now.
Sweating and crying and whispering to myself, I don't know what to do.
Shane Brown says it was 108 degrees when he found his mother Jolene inside her low-income housing unit. She used her Social Security to pay rent on an apartment that offered no AC. She's one of Oregon's 96 confirmed fatalities.
There should be ways to get those items and those things without having to put other parts of your life at risk.
Every year, extreme heat kills some 600 in the U.S., more than any other weather event. But the federal government, Oregon, and most states have no broad mandates for cooling devices, even for the poor and elderly in publicly subsidized housing.
So the good news is, if there's some silver lining, right, to the people who suffered and lost their lives here, it's that our local leaders are now talking about this problem. On this week's Straight Talk, Laurel Porter asked Multnomah County Chair Deborah Kafoury about it.
Well, Chair Kafoury, a big problem is a lack of air conditioning for many people. Are you considering requiring AC in multifamily dwellings and affordable housing?
Well, we are really looking at every option available, and we're working with different partners as well. We're working with multifamily apartment owners. We're working with our local community nonprofits who own and operate low-income housing, and we're working with our legislators to remove barriers at the state level that prohibit some individuals from using air conditioning, even if they had them.
Kafoury also says the county is planning to buy AC units for some low-income families as well. You can watch the entire interview tonight at 7 o'clock on KGW or on KGW's YouTube channel right now. Now, all this week, we have been partnering with our sister stations up and down the West Coast for a series called Scorched Earth. It's a look at our worsening wildfire seasons and what we can do to change that. In Washington, they're trying to make forests more resistant to wildfires, so they don't do as much damage or spread so quickly or easily. Glenn Farley has a look now at what's going on.
There are spots where the ground still smokes, in a forest with a story to tell. A forest that found itself on the front line of the huge Cedar Creek fire in Okanogan County just a few days before our visit. This is the biggest test so far of the state's forest health plan. Can you treat a forest so it has a better chance of surviving wildfire?
Oh, you can see what's out here, right?
Bottom line here, is this what you wanted to see?
Pretty much, yeah. I think most of this area that we're looking at that has had some fire impact is the low intensity underburn that we would really like to see on a unit after we've treated it like we did with the harvest.
I'm out with two firefighting veterans with decades in the business of forestry and the fight to protect it. The sound of firefighting helicopters testify that the Cedar Creek fire is far from contained.
If you had fewer trees, you're going to have better survival.
Pat Ryan oversees timber harvest on the state-owned trust lands that provide money for school construction.
It would look a lot different.
Ken McNamee is now the regional manager for the northeast quarter of the state. Low-intensity fires used to occur naturally and regularly, often triggered by lightning that hit this tree.
That was the natural part of the cycle, the kind of stuff that you're trying to get back to.
Exactly. Pre-settlement structures is what we're looking for out here in our stands.
To recreate those conditions, in 2019, the stand known as Unit 1 was thinned. Hundreds of trees taken out, along with much of the other low-level vegetation that, when lit, act like ladders, allowing the flames to climb to the tops of the trees, killing them. For the most part, that didn't happen here. To find out, Ken McNamee carves out an answer.
You can see how deep the bark is already.
Ponderosa pine bark evolved to survive fires like this.
Okay, we're starting to get into the cambium now. You can feel that this is still moist. Right there, that's the cambium layer, and that's the vascular system of the tree. So that's where the roots take the water up to the top. So right now, this is still kind of moist, so it tells me it didn't get super hot. Okay. So it's probably got a pretty good chance.
But another test called Unit 2 did not do so well. Still considered too dangerous to enter, we look from across the valley with Lands Commissioner Hillary Franz.
We are learning this as we go in part. You know, there's a discrepancy in science about how many trees should be left on the landscape, and obviously not all landscapes are the same. In this case, we left in many places about roughly 40 trees per acre. We're going to be going in after this fire's put out, and we're going to use it to learn.
But while these trees may not survive, the energy released here through the flames may have been less intense, giving firefighters a better chance to save the homes of people who live here. On Virginia Ridge in Okanogan County, Glenn Farley.
All right, thanks to Glenn for that report, and thank you for tuning in tonight. Ask a few questions. We're going to address some after the break. Use that hashtag HeyDan on Twitter. Email us at thestory@kgw.com. We'll finish the story after this. All right, let's read some comments. Mike wrote in and said, okay, Dan, I don't know if you track who's saying what, but I have written you 2 real angry emails in the past. I'm a medical professional, and I want to thank you for the COVID story you aired Friday. I really hope that it has some effects on the unvaccinated. That was the first part of our series, our Overwhelmed series, talking about what's going on in the hospital. So, Mike, thanks. I'm just going to pay attention to the nice email, though. M wrote in and said, good job on the Overwhelmed series. I bet the series will save some lives. And I really hope it does. And that kind of goes into the next 2 comments. This one says, Dan, do you think the unvaccinated will get the hint and get the shot? And also David from Vancouver said, could you please put up a graph of the percentage of vaccinated versus time? It looks like we've stalled. Now, if you look at who's getting vaccinated, it is actually starting to slowly, gradually trend back upward. Now, I think in the consensus nationally, not just here, is that's because Delta is spreading so quickly, and it's spreading most rampantly in communities that have lower vaccination rates. So people who have held out for one reason or another, who are now getting hit right in the face with the reality of this virus and starting to think of the preventative steps they can take to avoid a fate that is often being succumbed by the people who are in their lives. So hopefully people will get vaccinated and we can save people from some of the things we have been showing you in our series that will continue into next week. So thank you for being with us this week. It's Friday. Have a good weekend. We'll see you back here on Monday. That's the story.